I'm Angela, author of Poems from a Lost Soul and the host of the Relatively Damaged podcast.
And I am Carl Spreedes, author of Decide Your Destiny and custodian of the Decide Your Destiny movement. And today our show is What Does It Mean to Disrespect Your Soul? And I believe you have a poem for us, Angela.
I do. It's called How. It was so easy to forget who I was, as everyone around me always told me. I wasn't what or who I thought. I wasn't what my heart showed me. I wasn't what my soul told me. I was morphed into what they said I should be. You're doing this right. You're doing this wrong. I just want to know who I am without you telling me. I heard my heart and soul scream. But how? How do I listen to my heart? How do I listen to my soul? How?
I love it. I love it. I remember the first time you sent that to me, and I was just like, I don't know. I've not been a big poem reader in the past, but just and reading your book and kind of digesting poems, I'm like, wow, they just kind of hit you in a different way. And I think you posted something on your page the other day about poems, like being one of the most powerful ways of communicating.
Yeah. Poetry is the most powerful way to connect with your soul. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just how I mean, it is how I connect, which means that there's plenty of other people who connect the same way. But I think in some ways, there's not really a great way to describe a soul or to describe how do you get to your heart? How do you live from the heart? And with poetry, we can point to it and but the rest has to be done inside of the person who's reading the poetry or experiencing the experience. So it can be pointed to, but it cannot be given to anyone.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's something that, well, for my person, what it does for me is it kind of interrupts, like it has a way, like the kind of connections of words and the flow, like it can interrupt your normal, day-to-day thinking, priorities, tasks. Like it can just kind of hit you in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It just, yeah, like you said, communicates to your soul, connects to your soul. Definitely.
So are you saying that when you read the poetry that it creates maybe some cognitive dissonance or something that says, oh, wait, hold on, maybe it's this way and not that way?
But, possibly, but I think probably what I'm saying more would be it's, sometimes you can be flying through your day, so you're shooting off emails, you're reading something, you're kind of flying through everything. But then poetry, I feel like, has a way of not slowing you down, but it kind of just it hits a core, and it makes you kind of stop and go, and just kind of appreciate the words. And maybe that's what it is. The words are so well thought out and stringed together that it makes you appreciate them more and bring more presence to the moment, which I think anything, being aware of your heartbeat, all those sorts of things, like, brings presence to the moment. Like meditation, what you do, like the breath work, all that stuff, brings presence to the moment. I think poetry has that ability. I mean, I was reading a lot of your book whilst I was on a plane from Sydney to Perth, and it kind of brought me to that moment. When you're flying, you've got all these different things going on. There's so many distractions, everything. And I was like, wow, like, it just brought me to that moment and the wisdom that you're sharing. So thank you.
So it brought you, you're welcome. That's an amazing compliment. So it brought you into the present. I wonder if it's because of the question that happens, the wondering that's happening, like, what does this mean? How does, what's the author trying to say? Like, and maybe we more naturally go there in poetry. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's, and I think it circles back to what you were saying. It's like what you get from it, what you take away from it, and I think when we're reading things, obviously we've got our own opinions, we've got our own thoughts, we've got our own, like, it's like when you're doing a speech, or when you're communicating to someone or talking about something, you realize you're not talking, you're not, they're not receiving that you may send something, but it might not be received. So always
Mm,
remember, yeah. And it's a great tip for marketing, direct marketing, is just because you sent something doesn't mean it's received. And a lot of times we think, okay, I sent an email blast, or I sent a text, or I sent a letter. It doesn't mean it was received. It could have been lost in translation, or the person could have just not received your intention of that letter. That your intention, hey, I want to provide some information. I want to help. I want to assist. I want to explore opportunities together. They might not receive it. They might see, oh, this guy's just some salesperson, or whatever, and they might
right.
dismiss it. But then if you follow up in a creative way, you know, and you kind of follow up until it's received, until you get that response, then you're able to move further along, I think, in your career and have more success. So I think it's the same thing with, like, when you're talking to someone, when you're writing the book, whatever it is, you may send something, but it doesn't mean it's always received. And I feel like with poetry, it's one of those things where you kind of receive it, but it's like your personal, like, playground now with these words. It's kind of like you get to kind of play with these words. But I think because it's so intentional and it's tailored in such a way, I feel like it's got more power than just words sometimes. And
Hmm.
communication is, like, so important. Like, communication is really, really important. And you can write things, you can write essays, that can be gripping. But I feel like poetry, like, it's so well thought out. Um,
Hmm.
and that could be the same for essays and books, but just how it flows. I don't know. It just seems to be like, okay, I'm having this experience now, and I guess you're not really talking, like the poem that you started with today, like, how, like how you put those words together. You're not really talking at the person. A lot of humans are talking at each other. You're kind of inviting them along for a journey, and I think that's
Oh
what
yeah.
great writing is.
Yeah, I think that's necessary.
Yeah.
But back to like the receiving thing, I think sometimes, as the topic is disrespecting the soul, sometimes what we think is that we sent that, and that like you were saying, the person received it, and then we make a judgment because we sent it, and we assume that they received, that they
Yes.
they got it 100%. But I'm always reminded of, I think it was in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books. He talks about hints, and there's like four different things you can do with a hint. You can get it straight out the gate, you can misinterpret it, you can ignore it, and there's something else. But all of them, or you can, and you can get it and you can do nothing about it. So that's how I look at, like, sending out information or talking to people, because even I myself have my best intentions, and I disrespect myself every time I think someone got what I sent, even, or explained or told or whatever. Like, if I don't clarify that they got that information from me, then there's no guarantee that they totally understand what I'm talking about. And then I'm not only disrespecting myself, but I'm also disrespecting them because I didn't make that connection. Because I'm the one that's aware that I
Yeah.
need to make the connection. I don't think everyone is aware.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, definitely not. And there's this great Jim Rohn quote I heard somewhere, or something like, here's a great phrase: just because you heard it doesn't mean you got it, or yeah, like, kind of, like, just because you heard it once. And I think that is such and I definitely had that for a while. I've tweaked how I look at things, but it was kind of like, okay, I've read this book, or I've looked at this thing, or I've learned this strategy, or I've worked this out, and now I've really changed my mind to be like, hey, I'm just coming to everything as a playful kid again. Hey, I've heard this, I've listened to this book a few times, but let me listen again. And then I do, and I just hear something different. or it tweaks something else different in me, or it just shifts something in my mindset or my appreciation. And it's just like, and it's, just because you heard it doesn't mean you got it, like
Yeah.
it's it's such a powerful, and I think, if you're aware of it, um, and you're aware that repetition is important, even in a world where it's like, I just need more information, constant like flood of information, or time, I need to find some time. Sometimes you just need to carve out that morning routine or whatever it is, where you can just have a repetitive task. Because if you've been programming in, um, negativity, if you've had a family member, or whatever it is, or an upbringing, or trauma, or schooling, or environments that kind of compressed you, then you've had repetition. You've had repetition of the crap, or you've had the repetition of the negative, or the contracting of your spiritual being. You've had that repetition, and so that's why it's important to have repetition with the other. And I often say that, like, someone, like, oh, haven't you listened to this guy before? Or haven't you listened to this book or read this book? Haven't you, like, but this is very simple and straightforward. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean my mind is aware of it, or my subconscious is being aware of it. My mind and my subconscious might hear it, but there's so much programming that we've all had that it's very hard for it to actually adopt it. And whenever I had an awesome session yesterday with a mentor of mine, and it's incredible because, like, and talking about disrespecting your soul, a way of disrespecting your soul would be actually not opening yourself up to learn, even if you've heard the information before. Because just because you've heard it
Yeah.
before doesn't mean you're going to learn something new. And
Yeah.
this mentor, like, he was saying a lot of things that I was like, yep, no, I got it, yep, I got it. And I had this experience when I was a bit younger. Like, sometimes, like, my face can be blank when I'm listening to something, so people would like, okay, I don't think he's getting anything. So I've had to kind of work on, like, hey, like you said, raising the awareness. I'm raising my awareness as the receiver. Hey, I received that information. This is what I took away from it. Are we on the same page? Yep, great. Boom. Let's move to the next bit of information that's going to help out me in this situation. But it's like, I heard something like, you should go to multiple seminars, multiple workshops, like, you should have, like, you shouldn't just, you need to have the frequency of those. And the thing is, you might do a whole course or a whole workshop or something, read a whole book, but you just get one little golden drop from it, and then you read it again, you'll get more and more and more, but you just get that one thing. And so I had this session with my mentor yesterday, and right at the end, he just kind of unlocked something, and it's probably going to be slow to marinate, but it was just, I've got this kind of this goal that I'm going for, but I'm kind of using a lot of maybe the old, like, kind of greats to kind of motivate me, or listen to, or like learn from, to kind of inspire me. But we did some investigation, and he asked, like, so what happened when you first met that person, that you absolutely were head over heels with, what was the first time? And we were going off of that, and I went, actually, you know what? I did a crowdfunding campaign a couple of months ago for the book, and it wasn't just, let me just get money so I can get the book. It was really like, let me start building buzz, start getting my network aware that I'm not just Kyle Soul-Gazing photographer. I'm also this Decide Your Destiny thing that I'm working on, I'm working out and creating. And I've got this book coming, and because they might not be taking me seriously. So I was like, okay, let me see if people will pledge to the campaign. They all get a signed copy of the book. They get other bonuses and gifts and goodies. And so I did this campaign, and what it was it was an all or nothing campaign. So if I didn't hit the target by the end date, then I wasn't going to get it. Like, it all goes back into the accounts. So I was right towards the end of the month, and I was quite a ways off, and I was waking up in the middle of the night, like going to the toilet, and I was thinking about the campaign. Going to sleep, I was dreaming about the campaign. Waking up in the morning, I was thinking about the campaign. And it was actually refreshing to have one thing to just focus on. And I guess that's where you get these kind of CEOs or like really incredible entrepreneurs that just seem to just be incredible at what they're doing. They've got teams of people that focus on all the other areas, so they can go, hey, this is what I'm really good at. I need to, like, athletes, these incredible writers, or like scientists, like all these different sort of people. Like, they can focus on that one thing, but they've got a team of people taking care of everything else. And so I was just focused on that one thing. But what he was saying was, hey, you've got it in you from that experience, that kind of burning desire, that passion, that unrelenting, like, kind of obsession to kind of achieve something. And it was so interesting. Like, we had the whole conversation, and then all of a sudden, right at the end, that little tweak of thought, and then suddenly it just unlocked like a different level. And I often talk about like thresholds. I think, like, in life, you're trying to bust through different thresholds. Like, so, okay, I'm here at my level of understanding. Bang, let me go ahead. Let me go again. So trying to bust through, like, and
maybe the spiral. So if you envision like a spiral going up every time, like we might learn that same information that's given to us in that area of the circle but as we go up, it gets more intense, or more knowledgeable, or more whatever. But I wanted to speak also to beginner's mind. I participate on a server on Discord for street epistemology. And I remember a gentleman came in and who had been there for a while. And he's like, yeah, this, and he was sending me a private note. And he said, yeah, this guy, it's, I already know his thing. I said, do you really? Are you sure? I said, what about beginner's mind? I said, maybe you'll learn something new, and he's like, and then he came up with these fantastic questions that he was able to put in the chat because he just shifted his perspective just a tiny bit to, maybe I can still learn something from this guy, or maybe there's another way to look at it that could help me bring up another question. And then the other thing I wanted to point to was the repetition and focus. That is actually something that is taught and learned in meditation. And when meditating, I think it's important to find that focus, to really kind of slip out and take care of your soul. What does your soul want in that moment? Because I can hear myself in those moments. Now, I used to crochet when my hands worked well. I did not realize at the time I was meditating. Why? Because I was focused on something and just counting. Yes. And it was allowing my brain and my heart and my body to process all of these emotions and different things that happened. So if focus is hard for any of our listeners, maybe one of the things they could do is start with like 3 minutes or 2 minutes of just breathing. I think I think that's how I started. I know that's how I started. And just notice the thoughts that come up. There's no right or wrong thought. It just is. And the last thing I wanted to point to was you may find this funny, but I have read the Eragon series more, the Inheritance trilogy, I think is what it's called. Plus the last book. There's 4 books. I don't know why. I think he had to write the last book, but I have read it at least 5 times. And every single time I read it, I'm thinking I'm going to be in this one scene. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this happens first. That's right. I totally forgot about that. Because it's just things, because we forget. And I think that's why too, for people who like to read scriptures or spiritual texts and things like that, in that community, it's very normal to read and reread and reread. And for me, I might notice a note that was made or a bookmark that was put somewhere, and sometimes I'll be like, why did I put it there? And other times I'll be like, wow, that was deep. Or I'll have a new insight that totally blows the last insight out of the water. I'm like, oh, that's a big deal. This is kind of important,
Yes. Yeah. 100%. No, I love what you're saying there about a beginner's mindset, because I think a big part of disrespecting the soul is is not being, how would I say? We're not saying don't go fast, because when you're learning, sometimes you get into this like impassioned kind of like, oh, I want to learn more, and I want to, like you kind of like that
The
personal
flow.
development sort of, yeah, you're getting that flow, and so I wouldn't be saying like don't go fast, but it's kind of like be connected to it, and that's the thing. And sometimes when you're looking, you kind of scan over things and you go, that's what I needed. But beginner's mindset, like you said, when you're doing things like knitting, when you're doing things like, I mean, with photography, it's kind of like one of the beautiful things is it brings you into a meditative space, because like when you're taking photographs, and it may be a bit different on a shoot, but I try to bring it the same to everything, to just slow the pace down in terms of focusing on what I'm doing right now. Doesn't
You're
mean I'm
making me
moving
think of
slow.
yeah, right. No, you're making me think of Wim Hof. He says, "Slow it down."
Yeah, yeah, in the breathing exercises. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. And then
But it's
you're like,
funny because I think that in my life. Slow it down.
yeah, 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 yeah. And your face is
Become a
going red.
mantra.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah, but I think too, like also disrespecting the soul is that moment where you've come out of that power stage, you've done all this stuff, and all of a sudden there's nothing to do. And sometimes for me, it's like I want to force something to happen, and I think, well, I need to do that now, instead of just sit for a minute until I know what the next thing is that I'm supposed to do. And that's hard. I'll never forget the first day I did that. Well, as an older adult, and so I took the break, and then I came back to what I was doing, and all of a sudden everything made sense. Like
Mm,
my brain or whatever just needed that process. And it used to be I would beat myself up for taking that break. I would, like, there was something wrong with me, which I think when we talk to ourselves that way, that is disrespecting our soul. When we're saying there's something wrong, that's being mean to ourselves.
yeah.
And so how does one start to listen to that balance of their soul and of their heart?
Well, I think a big part of it is, like what you were saying there, with kind of listening to your, I guess, listening to your heart, listening to your soul. You're getting into better communication with it, and you're learning to kind of go, all right, this is when I need to kind of get distance from this thing. And in my photography business, I'll do a shoot with clients. We might go to like multiple different locations, and then I send them their photographs, and they choose their favorite like hero images. So the favorite images that they're going to put on the website. Yep, this is going to go on the about page. This is going to go right. This is the cover one. So we go through different styles. And so I might send them 200, 300 photographs, maybe 150, whatever it is, and then they choose either 4, 8, 12, like whatever the package is. And then when we go through that, I tell them when they're choosing their favorites to go through it, choose their favorites, then maybe give it a day or two, like go do something else. Or if if they're really pressed for time, go have a cup of tea, go for a walk with the spouse, walk the dog, whatever it is. Just have some distance from it and come back with fresh eyes. Because when your eyes are fresh, you go look at it and you go, I wasn't thinking, I don't know what I was thinking about that image. Like that really doesn't, connect with what I'm saying in my copywriting, my graphic design, and what my service is that I'm offering. It doesn't really connect. That's just a bit of a random image. Let me get that out of the favorite list. And then so I get them to create a new favorite list, and the photos become more condensed and more focused. And,
Mhm.
instead of choosing 60 or 80 favorites, they come down and they choose 30 or, like 40, and I've got to come in and finish it off. So, but it's I say go and get your eyes fresh. Let your eyes get fresh. Start focusing, and a great thing is like being like focusing on the environment. So you go out, you sit on a bench, and some like famous photographers have done this. They just sit on a bench and they just sit there for a couple of hours, just noticing everything, and you just becoming in tune with it. And then you grab your camera. So you kind of focus, okay, look, look at that tree, look at that dog, look at that bird, look at that sky, look at that building, and you're just kind of becoming more and more aware of it, because our brain is just filtering information, filtering, just everything's just going past, past, past. And it's the whole thing of why, okay, so you buy a yellow car, or you buy a certain car, and then you see that car everywhere. It's because your brain's focused, that's my car. And then when you drive around, your brain's being aware of it's filtering out all the other cars. It's not that there's suddenly everybody's driving your same car. It's that, it's focusing on that's that car that I'm driving. And you kind of, it's interesting because we've got our consciousness, but then we've got the subconsciousness. The subconsciousness is, I own this type of car, and it's focusing on those patterns. But I definitely think bringing more consciousness to the moment, bring more awareness to the moment, bringing more appreciation to the moment. And what I learned from that mentor was kind of bring more of me to this moment, Hey, George.
Yeah. Hey, George. Good to see you.
Thanks,
He's
matey.
a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Awesome.
You're making me think of a note that I saw earlier or an email. It was talking about trees and how trees had like 20 senses. And I started talking to my daughter. I was like, well, if trees have 20 senses, how come we only have 5? And I started naming off the senses of the trees, and my daughter's like, we have all of those. We can sense humidity, we can sense gravity, we can sense this, we can sense that. And I'm like, I really think by not being connected to our soul and to nature, and recognizing that we are connected on such a deeper level to the rest of the world, that we do miss those things. We miss those deeper messages. And and now I have a whole new belief system about what I mean about when I say be like a tree. Like if I could just meditate and be like a tree and really feel into all of those other senses, I think that would be a blessing for the soul.
Yeah. And I guess what's another definition of grounded? It's being connected,
True.
like being connected to what you're doing, connected to your purpose, connected to your mission. And that's what I took away from the session yesterday. It was about a goal, but I wasn't connected to it. I wasn't grounded into it. I wasn't bought in, And then when that mindset shifted and went, oh, I actually need to, and this is why I truly believe it's so important to have targets, like to have something that you're kind of aiming for, whether you get it or not. Bruce Lee had a great saying, it was like, the goal is not like, oh, I've got to go and achieve this thing exactly. It's to move you from where you are towards a general direction. And that's why I try my best to write my goals down regularly, my targets down regularly. Just even though if I've written them down once, just keep writing them down. Oh, I didn't achieve it that last month. Okay, I'm just going to throw it in the bin. I'm just going to aim for something lower. I'm just not. No, it's like, no, that target inspired me to a certain degree. So let me write it down again. Let me write it down again. And it doesn't have to be 2 hours out of your day or those sorts of things. But I think you should spend like a weekend, once a year to go through everything and really work out where your destiny's, heading is.
Yeah. What is your soul asking you to do? Maybe that would be a great question for our listeners that want to participate in. Is that question would be, what is your soul asking you to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or calling you to, because there's probably a calling there. If you're not sensing it now, it's there somewhere. Yeah.
And sometimes you got to shut off the other voices, or you got to, like you said, slow down, or and another great thing is what you're talking about, just like stop or pause for a second, is just kind of laying down, like say laying down on a couch or something, or just laying somewhere. And someone else was talking about this, and just like put an alarm clock on, or just like spend 10 minutes, not closing your eyes going to sleep, but just sitting, and just you're basically just allowing your engine room, kind of your spiritual engine room, like everything, your mind, everything, to kind of just pause, and then just build, and then revitalize, and then go for it again. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need that. They say like Kennedy, President Kennedy, he would like have naps during the day. All these like incredible people would have like naps during the day. I think maybe it was just you're dealing with such pressures and changes and challenges and developments. Just kind of that pause. Just let me pause. Let me have some distance. And it's the same thing in a business or I mean, that's why, like, why do you get a mentor? Why do you get a coach? A lot of those sorts of things. One of the biggest takeaways or the value is to step away from something, like, or get someone
Hmm.
who's away from it, not emotionally invested in every little tweak and thing, and kind of maybe a little bit, deluded. There might be a bit of delusion while you're fully into it. You kind of
Oh,
need to
for
step back.
sure. Well,
Yeah.
our emotions totally cloud how we interpret the world. If I'm in a bad mood or if I've had a tough day and I come into the house and the kids do something, then I'm going to be clouded by that emotion. So, stepping away. And so it sounds like what's really important this week would be noticing and asking that question, what am I called to do? Just notice the thoughts, notice there's no good or bad or right or wrong thought, and just notice. And if it's cool with you, I also have a poem called Soul that
Let's
I'm
hear it.
willing to share.
Let's hear it. And I love
So,
your call to action.
oh yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah, we worked on it together, That's how it goes, of course. Anyhow, so
Yep.
so just to point to the soul a little bit, your soul cannot exist in time. It extends beyond time. Your soul cannot exist in space alone, as it is more than space. How can one find words for your soul when there are no words to describe your soul, which is not a thing? Words are only ever used to describe limited things. You are not limited.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And you know what that makes me think of is what you said. Words are limited. You can say all the right things, preach all the right things, but if you don't bring energy and passion and this kind of spiritual commitment and kind of frequency to what the words you're saying, then it doesn't matter. And I've found that sometimes when I've wanted to express something, I'm like, God, there's just no word for this. I'm wanting to say this, but I just I can't. I'm limited to this language. But there's
Yeah.
like a spiritual language or a spiritual thing that wants to, like, there's something deeper or something that wants to get out and communicate to you. And sometimes a smile can do that. Touching someone's shoulder or just like hugging someone. The other day there was someone kind of sharing all this pain in their life, and they were talking to someone else. And I just went over and hugged them, because I just felt the person just needed a hug, and it's like I could say a word. Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. All those sorts of things. And I don't know. I find it very challenging to be that sort of person on that side. And it's funny because my grandmother, who raised me, was a counselor for 60 years. So she listened to people, and then maybe said a few things, like, but counselors really good at listening and allowing, creating that holding that space. But I just find it like so hard to kind of listen to things and like not be able to kind of like hug or like I'm like, I want to show like a genuine, thing. I can't just say like, that's sad to hear. I'm sorry,
Like,
can't be
so you're talking
critical.
about expressing that soul emotion. Like, how do
Yeah.
I express that without words? Because I can't use words anyway. Like,
Yeah, I find it limiting and not frustrating, but it's kind of like, it's I feel like sometimes words, yeah, I think we can read people. I think, people think humans are stupid and all these sorts of things, but maybe they might not be intellectual in this area or that area. But I think all humans have a natural ability at reading whether you're genuine or not. Some people maybe are completely, oblivious to it. I think a lot can read the genuine, like,
I think if they're traumatized, sometimes you lose that. Someone who's
yeah,
been traumatized loses that connection. And I always want to advocate for what trauma is. Trauma is not what I decide it is for someone else. It is only what the person who experienced that experience can decide. So I always want to say that. And I think if someone's there that's sitting there, one of the tricks I like to use is really focusing on my heart and getting myself into coherence if I've become dysregulated, like I become, because this emotion is too
Great
big
word.
for me. So
Yeah.
I'll get into my heart, and then what I'll really do is send that love and that energy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like you were saying, sometimes it is the hug, or it's the sitting quietly, or it's just not the words.
Expression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not the words. And
Yeah. The
I
words don't
find
feel
that,
right sometimes.
yeah, and I find that, like, those moments are so much more rewarding now than the words ever were.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's an evolution that maybe not everyone's aware. Like, I had someone the other day say, like, "Oh, why didn't you say this when I said that? Or why didn't you share? Why don't you?" Kind of like, expectation that I'm gonna, you're gonna say something. I'm gonna feel your need with these words. It's like, no, I'm just listening. Like but we rely. I think we rely very heavy on words, and
Yeah.
I think communication is essential. I think when we stop communicating, all hell can break loose. Like, and that's why I think it's so important in society, in extremely divisive years, to actually not avoid it or just go, "Oh, it's too hard. I don't want to bloody, like, have a conversation." It's like, no,
Yeah.
we need to have those conversations. Like,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I think too, don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I need you to tell me this." Like
yeah,
like, I'm no longer afraid. I think the first time I did that with my mom, she was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I need this." And I think I was giving myself props, and she's like, "You don't need to brag." I said, "No, I needed to know I did it well, and nobody else was telling me, so I was telling myself," like.
yeah. Good on
And
you,
she
bloody
was
hell.
like, she was like, like, because, different generation, different beliefs, different things like that. But, now also, if I'm with the kids or a caregiver or anyone else, your mom's here
Hey,
too. Hi,
Becky,
mom.
how you going, Becky?
um, I'm not afraid to say, I need you to tell me something, this is what
Yes,
I need from you. So
yeah.
it's kind of one of those fantastic things. I'm glad you were here to hear that, mom.
Popping in right in the right time.
Yeah, yeah. That was my heart, that heart
Yeah,
energy.
connected. But
We
but
are
sometimes,
connected.
like, well, sometimes it's, you know, it's kind of like another thing when you're talking about, disrespecting your soul. Like, sometimes it can be with communication. You might be sharing your dreams or goals or visions with the wrong people, and
Yeah,
sometimes the wrong people with their communication, or sometimes not even their communication. It can even be their reaction. Like, so someone, you can share your goals and dreams with someone. I've done it in the past, and you can see their reaction. And just because they believe, okay, I can't have that, or I can't comprehend that, or I can't, you know, assume that role for my own destiny. Like, they kind of retract, and they have that sort of doubt. And doubt is, I mean, I would say doubt is the devil. Like doubt is
yeah.
incredibly problematic thing for your dreams.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how to strengthen someone, if they come up to that person. One of the things I really like to remember is that when I tell someone something and they give me a response or reaction, that is based on their history, their experience, whatever is
Mm.
happening inside of them. And it really has nothing to do with me. So if I truly believe in what it is and I feel that I've been called from a soul level to do something, then I I can dismiss that. The problem is it's a lot harder done than said, right? Like, oh, just dismiss what that person said. Don't worry about it, because we tie that to love. We tie that to um, all these other things. But I mean, I'm in my late 40s, and I can say right now, when not following what your soul is calling you to do, it can be detrimental in life, and it can lead down some not fun paths, you know?
I'd say, exactly, and I'd say, the one thing that's helped me has been doubling down on where I'm deciding to go, who I'm deciding to serve, why I'm deciding to go there, and the time every day that I spend focusing on that. It's like this is respectful to my soul. If I
Yeah.
love other people, I want to contribute to other people, then I need to take care of me first and my goals and my dreams. My vision comes first. Bringing that into light comes first. Because if I don't water that garden, then I don't have anything to help feed and contribute and share. And it's
Yeah.
I think the one thing that's helped me with kind of, and you're right, it's challenging. It's not, you're not always going to, you can be caught at the wrong time, or, people are going to say things and it can kind of cut you like, by the wayside. But I think one of the things that really helped me is just to double down on that and kind of go, okay, who am I contributing to? You know, and also just complete responsibility and ownership. It is probably one of the hardest things, but is one of the most essential things that I've found in my personal life to allow me to grow and get to that next level. Is okay, you might say something to me. You might say my dream's unrealistic. Who do I think? Whatever people say. Or you can't do that. Whatever it is. But if I've got a responsibility to either allow that to come in and affect me, and it's kind of like my true belief of my health challenges in my life. I was like, when I worked out, okay, I created this. Like it was like me thinking that something just, you know, flew into my eye and, or whatever, something just kind of was under my bed
Yeah.
one day and then it popped up and caught me, like, or, or it was someone else's fault, someone in my life, the trauma, the child, whatever it is, me doing that, me playing the blame game and going into victimhood is one of the most disrespecting things you can do to your soul. And I guess that's what, when we're talking about it in the book, that's what I was really pointing to, is like, okay, I've done that. We've all done that. We can all do that. Of course, we're human. We're fallible, of course. But taking full ownership and responsibility, and it is difficult. It's not like when I have this conversation with people, it's not a like nodding. It's like because it's effing hard to take full ownership and full responsibility for
Yeah.
a lot of things. But if you're getting affected by people and what they say, and this can be, okay, what are you doing in the first thing in the morning? Are you opening the paper? Are you looking at things that are negative and heavy and hard? Like, well, then you're allowing that. You're allowing that reality to define you, rather than going, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm defining my own reality. And it's
Yeah.
such an amazing thing to see how many people really do allow their reality to be defined by what other people tell you is important. And I worked this out when I was a kid, when I watched the news with my grandparents, and they came from an era where you watch the news to find out about the world. And then I kind of worked out, well, this is attention grabbing sort of data. And then I looked at other journalists and I was like, oh, look, there's something going over in this country. There's something happening over here. Oh, there's all this other things going on in the world, but they're focusing on this little segment here. And that segment is going to dictate how I feel about myself and the emotions I carry into. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Now I know why so many people are divorced, so many people are depressed, so many people are struggling, so many people, because we're focusing our realities being defined by that little box. And that kind of went, okay, well, I can continue and follow everyone else, but then that's my responsibility.
Yeah. I remember I did a podcast. Gosh, I wish I could remember his name right now. But I was challenged to take responsibility for everything. And I believe the example he gave was take responsibility for the meteor hitting a planet. It's your responsibility. You did just radical responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think just being open to the idea is what was helpful. Not that I needed to absolutely do that. But then what happened is I started looking around in my life, and I was responsible for what I was creating. So it couldn't be the kids' job fault because they were in a bad mood, or my sister's fault, or my caregiver's fault. It was, okay, how am I participating? But earlier today I was in with some junior high kids talking about things like this. And one of the things we talked about was, are you the movie or are you the screen? Right. And the idea behind this is that, if you're the movie, then you're the hero of your story, and anything that happens on the screen is going to impact you. But if you're the screen and you're watching a war movie and there's an explosion on the screen, does the screen blow up?
Yeah.
It doesn't lose its balance. It's resilient, So now instead of being the hero of that show, I can be the screen and just be intrigued and notice what's happening on my screen. And then I can decide what I want to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. And like at the end of the day, with the ultimate creator, is what you're saying. We're creating our reality. We're creating what's on our screen.
Even social media, though, like
everything.
Confirmation bias is in social media. So what I'm paying attention to on my social media is gonna, because of how the algorithms are written, that tells me what I'm paying attention to in my life. And which is actually really interesting, because I'll have people be like, oh, there was so much crap out there on social media, and I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I only ever saw like rainbows and butterflies. Not true, but I usually see like inspirational quotes, things like that.
I get inspired by it, like, I get inspired by it, and like, oh, look at all these people that are posting and doing these great things, and look at that video. That's inspiring me. I need to do another one. And I'm like, oh, there's so much goodness in the community and loving. And then you'll listen to someone else, and they'll say social media is a problem of the world. And it's like, well, then again, we're blaming rather than taking responsibility. How do I have what am I doing? Me even saying that is adding to the crap pile.
Right.
It's that, and I think what changed for me a while ago was, how is this constructive? How is this constructive? I had a conversation recently with someone, and I think everyone can be misunderstood, but sometimes I can be a bit misunderstood, and someone was kind of misunderstanding me, or and so, and then they kind of got into their heads, and then they kind of went, oh, like based on my feeling and like what I'm feeling here, and it was just kind of like, well, stop feeling. Like, how many cells do I have in my body? How many emotions do I have? That are constantly. I didn't feel like going to the gym. I didn't feel like writing in my journal. I didn't feel like doing this. How many feelings do you decide to listen to? Because if I'm listening to all my feelings, I was basically like, shut it down and communicate to me, and find out if what's going on in your head is in reality. And I think that's like what you're talking about with the algorithms. I think we have our own algorithms. We have our own, algorithms that we've kind of been assigned to with our top 5 people that we spend time around, our media sources that we've collected, our thinking, and I think the victimhood thinking or the blaming thinking is a huge algorithm that just keeps sending you that sort of content. And Wayne Dwyer talks about it excellently. I was listening to something the other day, and he was saying how like you'll attract it, like you're, and I think Nikola Tesla also talked about this. Like the mind is like a radio signal, like it's receiving frequencies, and you're attracting it. So whatever you're deciding to position your mind in, and you ask, okay, why is there, like you said, you can
I'm going to shift that to heart. I'm going to say heart. Because the mind only goes out an inch from the brain, the EMF field, and the heart goes out up to 10 feet from the body.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's I don't know. It's a long way.
Yes, yeah. It's a wide. Well, yeah. Sorry. No, thank you for pointing that out. 100%. So, I guess as a heart, like your spiritual being, who you are, this beauty, this purity that's in you, that can create absolutely anything. Whatever you're assigning that to or looking at, you're attracting that. And it's such a, and people have like different things about the law of attraction, all those sorts of stuff. And yeah, you've got to act, you got to command what you want in your destiny, but be really aware of what you're attracting by your thoughts, by your words, by what you're looking at. And I think the big thing today is by like what information are you allowing into your what reality are you allowing into your world? Because you can think
Yeah.
it's got everything. There's people that are doing
Yeah.
incredibly well. There's people that are doing incredibly bad. There's people that are ascending and people that are vastly declining. And you know, everything's there. And I think a great point was what you were saying as well, like the different experiences. You know, you can ask someone, oh, like, you know, we'll just choose a location that everyone probably knows, like Hawaii. You know, oh, you went to Hawaii. You know, how did you enjoy it? You know, oh, you know, it was bad. It was dirty. This thing happened. That thing happened. This person was mean to me. It was a terrible place. You know, and you chat to someone else. How's Hawaii? Oh my God, best place ever. I just totally, you know, rebooted. I'm thinking of going there once a year. You know, and it's like the place is neutral, but the experience is what you bring to it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to go, okay, that happened. Where's the silver lining? Where's the learning?
Right.
Where's the lesson? How do I avoid that? You know, how do I avoid that next time? Because if I
Okay.
go to this
Yeah.
place,
Well,
yeah.
and there are like people, like, we don't always know we're doing it. I mean, I use this all the time in my life, especially when people do stuff or they make assumptions about me. They know not what they do if it's injuring
Ooh,
me.
yeah.
You know, so I'm always, you know, that's one of my mantras, like, oh, they know not what they do.
I love that.
Because,
Okay.
like, well, subconsciously, so someone doesn't even know okay, I did not know I was playing the blame game until I knew I was playing the blame game. And
Yeah, same.
how do I get there? So I think it's that's probably the point, or what I would like to point to is, okay, well, if you don't know what you're doing, how are you supposed to know what you're doing? And a lot of times, like, people around us will try and tell us, but maybe we don't want to hear it, or we can't hear it. And I think that's where, like, what we were talking about earlier with meditation, or that taking that break and just sitting for 10, like you said, 10 minutes, I think. And I would agree with that. You know, I'm saying, if you can't do 10 minutes, start with 2 minutes, you know, and just notice the thoughts. Don't judge them. Just notice them. Because as you start noticing, what happens is then you can make a shift. If you don't notice, though, you can't change. And
Yeah.
everyone has the ability to change. It doesn't matter how old anyone is. You know, I just had this conversation recently. If I look back, I know I've changed. If I look forward, I make the assumption that I'm going to be the same person I am today, even though I know looking back, I changed.
Yeah.
And then when I look at other people, sometimes I will think the same thing. Well, there's no possible way they could change, even though they're different than they were a year ago. You know, so I think really embracing that idea and the possibility, change is possible. And we are always learning and growing, always.
Exactly. And probably what I'd love to finish on is, like you said, about looking back and then looking forward. Like it's so funny. You look back and you realize, oh my gosh, like, you know, how much have I changed? And there's that saying that it's like, you know, you might overthink like what you can change in a year, but then you'll underthink what you have changed in 5 years, you know, and it's like that kind of distance thing. But one thing in terms of looking forward, it's kind of where I look at it, it's kind of like, okay, if you're around the right circles, and the beautiful thing about the internet is, like, me and you can have conversations, and like some of your thoughts, some of your ways of communication, your articulation, I'm like, wow. And then you're around different people.
Same.
And you're in your little echo chamber. Yeah. And then you're kind of like, you're seeing, I think that's when you start seeing the future you. It's like, wow, if I'm surrounded by these people, if I'm surrounded by these top 5 people that are going here, well, then that's kind of, I'm going to go here, you know, and that's what allows you to see, I guess, your future you know. And we spoke about Joe Dispenza before earlier, and, you know, the whole meditation of like feeling the emotions before the event happens.
The event. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that actually is starting to attract that to you. But if you can't even feel it, if you've got so much negative trash talking that it's like, oh, that would never happen to me, I'm just not lucky, I can't know, all that sort of stuff, then you're cutting off the ability to feel. And that's where, like, looking at being around communities and groups and masterminds with people that are going somewhere, it helps you to go somewhere, because you're you're starting to feel where they're going, and you go, oh my gosh, this person's no smarter than me, no different to me, no, same sort of rough upbringing to me, but they're over here. What? How? Oh, they had different information, and they followed their information, and they had discipline and consistency, and those two aspects. And I think it's the same thing with like, okay, what are you watching? Are you watching things that inspire you? Are you going to talks about, young people that are kind of changing the game, and like, all this sort of stuff? Like this person I met yesterday at this network function, he was talking about Web3 and metaverse and, augmented reality and all that sort of stuff. And obviously with change and lots of these things, it kind of becomes concerning. And, so I was asking some questions. I said, okay, how is this going to help? How's this going to assist kind of the mental health epidemic? How's this going to help with that? Is it going to have people more connected? Is it like, and so discussing it and being curious, like you said, and having that beginner's mindset, and being, rather than just going, oh my God, this is just more of us turning into machines rather than spiritual beings and humans, and we're turning to this thing, rather than just like chucking that onto it. It's like, well, how can it be used for good? Because again, it's like all these things are neutral. Like we apply what we apply to it.
Yeah. Fantastic conversation today. Geez.
Yeah,
good thing we're coming back next week.
Yeah. Awesome topic.
Yeah, it definitely was. We pulled that from, we decided on the topic as the first chapter of your book, Decide Your Destiny, which is, you can buy on Amazon. Is the audiobook up yet, or?
Yeah, so it's up on, I think it's up on 8 sites.
Okay.
I have to double check what those sites are. But yeah, the first chapter.
Hey, it's out there. It go to the website, right? Like.
Yes. Yeah. The first,
I think and the website is down in the doobly-doo.
Yes. The first chapter is it is down in the doobly-doo. The first chapter is.
You just wanted to say it.
I did. I was like,
yeah,
I need to keep that one. I'm going to use it.
I stole it from Scott Carney, so you could totally steal it for me too.
That's awesome. I'm going to do, instead of thingamabob, doobly-doo. I like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'll tell you now quickly. It's on Libro FM, Google Play, Nook Audiobooks, Kobo, Walmart, Chirp, audiobooks.com, Storytel, and Scribed. So
fantastic.
Someone the other day was like, oh, I've got a Scribed account. I'll get it. I'm like, okay. So I don't know where people have their platforms and things like that. So you put it on this one site and it distributes to, I think, 47 different retailers. So
fantastic.
I'm going to have to definitely learn a little bit more about all of that stuff. But yeah, the first chapter of the book is disrespecting your soul. So, and it's talking about how not to disrespect.
Yeah, and we will be talking, we'll be doing chapter 2 next week, and I'll come again with some poetry, so that, that's how we're recognizing that the poetry of the lost soul and the book, just, they seem to go together, like, somehow. It was magic.
Yeah. It was magic, and that's why we've come together here. So it's, more content to come.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I've only got 22 chapters. You've got a lot of poems, so maybe I'll have to start writing some more chapters.
It's a challenge.
Yeah, challenge accepted.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm Angela, and that's Kyle.
And I'm Kyle.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Bye.